Evening, everyone, and welcome to the remote commission meeting of the Port of Olympia. It's May 24th, 2021. Thank you for joining us. The Port of Olympia is working diligently to address the threat posed by COVID-19 to Thurston County, the state of Washington, and the United States. On March 16, 2020, the commission adopted Resolution 2020-03, authorizing certain emergency powers in light of the COVID-19 outbreak, including invoking applicable emergency exemptions to meeting notice requirements and location restrictions of the Open Public Meetings Act. Pursuant to that resolution, the Port of Olympia Commission is conducting today's meeting remotely. The Port is following the guidance from Thurston County Health Department to take all efforts to prevent the spread of this virus and is acting in the interest of the safety and welfare of the public, the community, and our employees to limit its spread. So Commissioner Zita, would you like to kick off the meeting by leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, Commissioner, I think you're muted. Okay. Commissioner Zita, can you unmute yourself, or is that Aspen? Looks like everybody's muted except for me.
I can hear you, Commissioner Downing. I'm not sure what
Okay.
happened with Commissioner Zita.
Okay,
You might have stepped away for a second.
I'll just go ahead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Well, commissioners, do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second, for the purpose of discussion.
And it's been moved and seconded for purposes of discussion. And Commissioner Zita, please go ahead.
Yes, I see we have the rules on the action calendar, and that's appropriate since we had this for advisory. However, I don't see a red line version of the rules, and we should see a red line so we know what changes we're approving. So I would propose that we table the rules until we have a red line version.
Well, thank you for that proposal, Commissioner. And since we're discussing, I wonder if we can solve this problem by having, of course, Felicia's, I presume, on the call, and perhaps we can turn the screen over to her and she can point out well, I'm sure she has the red line version. So I appreciate your concern, Commissioner Zita. You know, I thought, in the interest of being absolutely thorough review, I would propose amendment to yours that we, the amendment to the meeting minutes would include a red line version presented on action calendar item 3.
I'm sorry, I don't accept that as a friendly amendment, Commissioner Downing. I'd like to see the red line version before we come into the meeting.
So there's been an amendment to tonight's agenda, which is to table action calendar item 3, resolution 2021-02 commission rules. Is there a second? Amendment fails for lack of a second. I'd like to propose an amendment to tonight's agenda to have action calendar item 3 discussion include a red line version as presented by Felicia Brown, so she can review and verify that the corrections we made to the rules resolution at our last meeting are in fact in place. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor of accepting this agenda with the amendment to action calendar item 3, which will include a red line version presented by Felicia Brown when we get there, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion, looks like we have an agenda. With that, we're going to move to just a second. Sam is, I don't see Felicia on the call. Is she going to be in at the appropriate time?
Felicia is on the call,
Yes.
Commissioner
Okay,
Downing.
great. I'm not looking at everybody. If I hit this button, then I see Felicia. Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm sorry, Felicia.
Sorry, I couldn't speak fast enough. I am here and we do have a red line version previously that was available, so I can track that down for when we get to that agenda item.
Thank you so much. Now we move to special reports, and we have a warrant over 200,000 leasehold tax. Do we have anybody that wants to say a word or two about that?
Yeah, I will, Commissioner. It is just the leasehold tax in the amount of $214,982.47.
And can you add a couple more sentences for the benefit of the public? What
Sure,
that
yeah.
leasehold covers?
Those are leasehold taxes that we collect from our tenants, and then they are sent to Thurston County Treasurer and then dispersed to various state and local agencies.
I see. What period of time does that cover, may I ask?
First quarter.
I see. Thank you very much. Okay, then moving on to the executive director report, and with our own Sam Gibney.
Great, thank you. Okay, next slide. I am very happy to report that after nearly 25 years, a cleanup at the old Pearson Air Fuel site at the Olympia Regional Airport has received a no further action proclamation from the Washington State Department of Ecology. I'd like to thank the port staff as well as Chris Waldron and his staff at Pioneer Technologies Corporation for their assistance in the final steps to make this occur. So we are no further action required. Get to check the box on this one. Next slide. The marine terminal has been recertified in Green Marine. Green Marine, as you commissioners are aware, is a voluntary third-party certification program that requires participating port authorities to establish baseline performance indicators in multiple facets of marine terminal operations, and then demonstrate tangible year-over-year improvements to maintain certification. This renewal happens every other year and includes a third-party audit. I'd like to express my appreciation to Environmental Project Manager Barb Tope for her work in ensuring that we receive recertification. It's one of the things I really appreciate about the Port of Olympia is that we take our environmental stewardship very seriously, and we don't just take our own word for it. We actually have these independent third-party auditors. Next slide. The port had the honor to be the steward for the 24-foot Lummi totem pole as it makes its important journey to Washington, D.C. The pole that was carved by the Lummi Nation tribal members is embarking on a cross-country journey deemed the Red Road to D.C. from Washington State to Washington, D.C. as a gift to the Biden administration. Along the way, the pole will make stops accompanied by a team of about a dozen of its carvers at sacred Native American sites in Idaho, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and South Dakota before reaching its final destination, the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian, where it will be displayed this fall. The port stored the totem pole overnight in our secure marine terminal. The port visit was the last stop on its Pacific Northwest leg. Seen here is Doug James from the House of Tears Carvers. Next slide. You might recognize this face because Saturday, May 22nd was Mike Crawford Port Day. In 2020, port employee Mike Crawford retired after 40 plus years with the port. Mike was such an innovative, passionate, inspiring, and dedicated employee that the Port Commission passed Resolution 2020-05, recognizing Mike for his years of dedicated service and designated May 22nd Mike Crawford Port Day. Next slide. May 22nd was also National Maritime Day. National Maritime Day celebrates and honors the nation's maritime heritage and the men and women who serve and have served as U.S. merchant mariners. Maritime activity in Washington State has long been a pillar of the state's economy, and it continues to grow at an average of 6.4% per year. According to the Washington State Department of Commerce, the maritime sector contributes more than $21.4 billion in gross business income and is responsible for 146,000 jobs in the state and $30 billion in economic activity. Next slide. We are excited to announce the return of Movies at the Marina. Our team is working on some exciting changes for this season's events. More information will be posted soon. In the meantime, if you are interested in participating as a sponsor for Movies at the Marina, you can view our sponsorship opportunities by visiting portolympia.com. Next slide. The Olympia Regional Airport Master Plan update officially began in March 2021. The Technical Advisory Committee had their first meeting on May 20th. The Technical Advisory Committee members represent a cross-section of airport stakeholders. Their role is to provide technical guidance throughout the master plan update process. Opportunities for the public to engage will be communicated soon. For more information, you can visit portolympia.com and select airport. Next slide. Our port maintenance team has been busy replacing the fascia at the Washington State Patrol offices in our Tumwater Clean Water development. Thank you for our team for continuously providing high-level work. And this is just another example of the cost effectiveness and overall effectiveness that we're able to achieve by bringing more of our maintenance in-house. Next slide. And as always, we have several ways for the public to engage with us. Here are some easy ways to contact us, give us feedback, or request a conversation. And that's it for this evening.
Thank you, Sam. Can you go back one slide, please? I had a question about
Mhm.
that. Of course, this is Clean Water Center, and the port owns the land and owns the buildings as well. Is there an exception for the, refresh my memory on the Squiggles and Giggles? I think that's the name of it, the childcare. Did we build that building, or did the lessee build it?
That was the port, and
Okay.
that is leased. And this building here too, the port still retains ownership of this building and maintains it. Whereas some of the other buildings, as you might recall, the latest one that was just rehabilitated, we actually sold the building. It was surplus by the commission. We sold the building, and then the developer then renovated the building. So in this one, we still retain ownership.
Thank you. Oh, I see a couple more questions. Commissioner Zita.
Could we please go to the airport master plan update slide? Great. Thanks for letting us know that the technical advisory committee is meeting. How were the stakeholders chosen, and is there a representative from the nearby neighborhoods?
I don't have the exact list of that. I'd be happy to have Airport Director Rudy Rudolph provide the selection process to you, and as well as the names that are serving on the Technical Advisory Committee.
Since commissioners were not consulted about the makeup of the stakeholders, I will recommend formally that neighborhood representatives be included among the stakeholders.
Thanks, Commissioner Zita. I think that that was a good question. And I think that, once we see some information back from our airport director, you may or may not want to, modify your motion. So I don't want to, kind of direct activity, especially since the commission has already decided that Olympia Airport is not going to be part of any statewide airport enhancements. We've already decided that. So this is, not a major deal, but I feel more comfortable commenting on this once I see, response to your question from the airport director. Commissioner McGregor, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say that I'm pleased to see that Pearson Air has finally been resolved and that we have no further action out there. And it's been a long time coming to get that ground cleaned up from a spill that happened eons ago. So thank you for finally getting it to that point.
Thanks, Executive Director Gibney. Good report, lots of positive information. Turning now to our litigation report with our own Felicia Brown.
Thank you, Commissioner Downing. I do not have a litigation report this evening.
Thank you, Felicia. Next up is public comment, and we didn't have any folks sign up in advance for a public comment. However, I'd like to extend that to any folks that happen to be on the call. So please just ask for 3 minutes and state your name and where you're from. Any public comment tonight from the panelists? Okay, then. We're going to go ahead and move on to the consent calendar. And tonight's consent calendar includes the minutes of May 3rd, 2021 Commission work session, the May 10th, 2021 Commission meeting minutes, and bills and vouchers for April, batches 13 through 17, in the amount of $904,147.86. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Move to approve.
Second for purpose of discussion.
So it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar, and Commissioner Zeta would like to have a little discussion.
Need to add just a few words to a couple of the minutes. Do you want to discuss that now or later?
Do you have well, in that case, Commissioner Zeta, I think what you're asking is, can we take each item one at a time, which we're happy to do. So I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the May 3rd Commission work session.
I move to approve with one change.
Commissioner Zeta, go ahead for that one change, please.
On the first page of the minutes, under Resolution 2020-102, Commission rules, the commissioners asked questions, discussed the topic, and made recommendations. It's my usual thing. When we make recommendations, we should make note of it. Move that we approve with the addition of "and made recommendations."
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 May 3rd, 2021 Commission work session minutes approved with that one correction from Commissioner Zeta. Moving on to May 10th, 2021 Commission meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve with one change under Resolution 2020-102, Commission rules resolution. Again, the commission asked questions, discussed the topic, and made recommendations. Same change.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the slightly amended May 10th, 2021 Commission meeting minutes, please say aye.
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 Thank you, Commissioners. Next is bills and vouchers for April batch 13 through 17 in the amount of $904,147.86. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Bills and vouchers are approved. Thank you, commissioners. That takes care of consent calendar. And now we move to the action calendar, which is the item number 1, on-call legal consultation and services contract number 2021-1035. Felicia, you have the floor.
All righty. Good evening, commissioners. Felicia Brown, General Counsel, and I am here tonight for an action item that requires a decision regarding our on-call legal consultation and services contract number 2021-1035. Next slide, please. Brief background, the port has had a contract for general counsel services with Philip Burgess PLC since April 2014. And that contract has had 8 amendments, currently expires on May 31st, 2021, which is the end of the month. And what we're bringing to you tonight for a decision is a proposal for on-call legal and consulting services. Next slide, please. When we talked about this previously, there was mention of the amount that the amendments in the original contract for general counsel services represented. And so what I've done here is taken some information that's been shared with the commission previously and highlighted it by the approval of the original contract, the amendments 1 through 8, the not to exceed amount, as well as the effective expiration date, effective meaning that those dates change with the amendments. As was discussed previously, this contract totaled for $1,720,000. Next slide, please. Here, the justification is that not only does the current contract expire in this month, but going forward, the on-call contract will have a narrow scope of work, and it will provide support for ongoing matters and transition time with the in-house counsel being myself. This contract has an effective term for 2 years. Our recommendation is to do it for the 2-year period so that we can ensure some continuity. And that would be from June 1st, 2021 to May 31st, 2023. Next slide, please. And the description of work within the on-call contract would be that Philip Burgess would provide on-call special legal counsel advice, support, and representation to the Port of Olympia as requested by Port Legal Counsel and or the Executive Director. 2 key terms are that this work would be permitted only on an as-needed basis, and it would not exceed $200,000 for the 2-year contract term. Next slide, please. The next steps here are commission action tonight to execute the contract, and the contract would be effective June 1st, 2021. Next slide, please. And for your consideration, I'm providing a sample motion that reads, I move to approve personal services agreement number 2021-1035 for on-call legal and consulting services with Phillips Burgess PLC from June 1st, 2021 to May, that should actually say May 31st, 2023, for a total contract amount not to exceed $200,000. And if there are any questions about tonight's sample motion or presentation, please let me know.
Thanks, Felicia. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Felicia at this time?
No.
Okay. Felicia, I have a question, and that is, number one, I'd like to let the public know that this is a contingency, and, you know, in a perfect world, we wouldn't spend a nickel of this, but Phillips Burgess having a vast knowledge of the port and the various issues that have faced the port over the years, and you're going to carry that torch going forward. And so we've provided for this transition. So would you be the person saying, we want to bring in Phillips Burgess, or would you and Sam together agree on that decision? Who would be the person to manage this particular contract?
Thank you, Commissioner. At the end of the day, as legal counsel, I represent the port, and because I represent the port, I am responsible for deciding whether or not to bring on special or any type of external counsel. And so I'll also be responsible for managing any work that external counsel does on behalf of the port.
Great. Well, Felicia, could you put that motion back up on the screen for us?
There we go. Aspen's going to do that for us.
Thank you. Thank you,
So,
Aspen.
so I have a procedural question. Are we moving to authorize the executive director to sign this contract? Do you want that in the motion?
I think it would be best to have that in the motion just for clarity's sake. Yes.
Okay. Well, then I would move to authorize the executive director to sign personal services agreement number 2021-1035 for all on-call legal and consulting services with Phillips Burgess PLLC from June 1st, 2021 to May 31st, 2023 for a total contract amount not to exceed $200,000.
Second the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner, but friendly amendment, would you like to reread that and put in the date of May 31st?
I
I think
did.
you did.
I did.
Oh, you did. I thought I
Yes.
heard May 23rd.
No.
Maybe I heard the 2023. So it's been moved and seconded to authorize the executive director to sign the personal services agreement number 2021-1035 for an on-call legal and consulting services with Phillips Burgess PLLC from June 1, 2021 to May 31, 2023 for a contract amount not to exceed $200,000. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Felicia, for bringing this forward for our consideration.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Next on the action calendar, we have the 2020 Economic Benefit Study Personal Services Agreement number 2021-1023 with our own Jerry Severe.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jerry Severe, the Administrative Services Director, here tonight to get approval from you for the 2020 Economic Benefit Study Personal Services Agreement. Next slide, please. A little bit of history on the Economic Benefit Study. The Port has issued economic benefit studies in the past using every 5 years as a mark in time for comparison purposes. The two most recent studies were on the 2014 study that was actually published in 2016, and then we had a 2009 study that was published in 2011. The Commission adopted $28,000 in this year's budget for this project, and the Commission indicated that they wanted to have the same type of survey done as previously so that we would have three very similar formats comparing and contrasting those different time periods. Next slide, please. We issued an RFQ on March 17th and received 5 qualified proposals. The selection team was Lynn Fosher, Jenny Folia-Jones, Alan Rowe, and myself. I provided an advisory to the Commission at the April 26th Commission meeting where I recommended a contract with Martin and Associates. They are a very highly qualified firm and they have performed the work for the Port in the past, and they did the last 2 studies as well as many other Washington Ports benefit studies. I did mention at that advisory that the cost of the study will exceed the budget by approximately $10,000. Next slide, please. In our request for proposals, we indicated that the scope of work would, the study that would include field work and analysis necessary to address all the requirements. In addition, Martin Associates indicated that they will collect data for both the 2019 and 2020 years, given that 2020 was COVID and may have an impact on our tenants and our port operations. But after they've collected that data, then the Port can make a determination later on what data point we want to use in this study. But the methodology that will be used by Martin Associates is the same as they have used in other years, so we will have a very comparable study to use. Next slide, please. This is just the timeline that was presented to the Commission back in the budget, and again at the last couple of presentations I've given to you. We're right on target with issuing the contract in May, and they will do the work between now and September, be back to the Commission in October to present the final report. Next slide, please. And this is a sample motion for the Commission to move to authorize the Executive Director to enter into a personal services agreement 2021-1023 with Martin Associates for the economic benefit study in an amount not to exceed $38,000. I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Jerry. Commissioners, do you have any questions of Jerry on this presentation tonight? Commissioner Zeta, please go ahead.
Could we look at slide four, please? 2 slides back. So the 4th bullet says the port can make a determination later on what data to use in this study. It sounds like that means if the COVID year data 2020 is not favorable, we can decide not to include it.
That is correct. We've normally done a study using every 5 years. So 2019 is essentially that 5-year point, but because this didn't get budgeted for last year, we had suggested we do a study using a 6-year point in time. But again, because we really don't know the impacts, I mean, I think this will be good data for us to have once we get both 19 and 20 for the port to decide if we want to go ahead and use it as a 5-year study or use it as a 6-year study, because, and look at what those impacts are. So I'll be bringing this back to the commission at the point where we're making that decision and we can decide what we want to use it. But again, because they recommended they do this, because they said all of the studies they're doing this year, they're kind of doing both years just to decide, because some places COVID had a huge impact and changes, skews the data completely. So we'll know that later in the process.
So this is a 6-year study because we got a late start. And it sounds like we're considering the option of cherry picking data or eliminating data if it doesn't look good enough. So
No,
we'll have that discussion when the time comes.
Yeah, the option of having a 5-year study or a 6-year study will be the option.
Well, great. I had a similar question, and if I may, Commissioner McGregor, sorry, let me just jump in here. So you're saying just when we get a little further into it, the option would be to whether or not to include 2020. Is that true?
Correct.
I mean, I'm not sure how you're going to decide that. I think that in the interest of safety, you pick the first 4 years and then you jump to 2021. I mean, the port in some areas were impacted, in some areas we weren't. So it'd be difficult to, I don't know. So.
Well, we wouldn't be able to do a 2021 until after the year is completed. So we either pick 19 or 20, or we let them look at both. And they had recommended we look at both because that's what they're doing for other entities. So I'm just going with their recommendation.
So
wait, Commissioner McGregor first.
I thought you were
around
done.
the
Go
table.
ahead. Are you done?
I'm done.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So Jerry, what I think is realistic is to keep it on a every 5-year cycle, is to look at 2019, but to have the data for 2020 to see what impact 2020 had by the whole COVID situation, I think it'd be good information to have down the road. And so I think that we should do it on 2019 and then have provided to us the 2020 data so that we can look at it just to see what the difference is, if any, from 2019 to 2020. And that'll give us kind of an indication of what the impact was to especially our tenants. And because I don't think the marine terminal suffered very much during the pandemic because it was kept pretty active. So I think it would be interesting to see the impact in the other areas of the port's business related to 2019. So that's what I think about that. It would be good to have both sets of data. The other item, if you can go back to slide 5, excuse me. So in this slide, what I'm seeing is that the commission would have approved the contract in April, but we're not doing it till May, the end of May. Will that impact the timeline below? Will it still come back in October, or will it be more in line with November?
No, he says they'll be able to complete this on time.
Okay. All right. That was my question. Thank you.
Ms. Zeta, please go ahead.
So Commissioner Downing says, in the interest of safety, we should skip 2020. That would make our economic benefits probably look better. Commissioner McGregor says, let's keep our 2020 data so we can see the impacts of COVID. I agree with Commissioner McGregor. We should not eliminate any data.
Well, what I was getting to is that we've done it on a 5-year turn. 2009, 2014, 2019 would have been the next one it would be done on, but it will be nice to see, but not include 2020 into that, but nice to see the impact of COVID as it relates to that year, as far as jobs and income and revenues that were generated or not generated between 2019 and 2020, but not include 2020 in our as a 6-year pattern. Leave it at 5 years so we have baselines on which to work from and move forward.
Thank you, commissioners. Commissioner Zeta.
So we're being asked to approve an economic benefits study, and staff confirmed at a recent meeting that a benefit study is primarily useful for public relations. The Port Commission had originally agreed to include an impacts and benefits study. That can be a useful planning tool, not just a PR tool. That was changed to a benefits only study at the last minute. One reason given was that we couldn't afford to pay more than $25,000 to include both an impacts and benefits study. This proposal is now asking for $38,000. So it's clear that cost is not the real obstacle to including impacts study with the benefits study. It appears that Port leadership prefers a benefits only study for PR purposes without examining impacts. For that reason, I will not be able to support this proposal.
Thank you, Commissioner Zeta, for those comments. I like I myself like the economic benefit study because it focuses on the change from the prior study. So we have the similar benchmarks, and every 5 years we look at economic benefits. And for me, I don't really consider it a PR piece. I consider it a self-evaluation of, are we improving? Are we making a greater impact in the community? And in what is the economic benefit of the port? So I think it's important to compare apples to apples when you look back at the prior studies and so forth. So I think this is quite valuable. But I do recognize your point, and it's always been a mystery to me how public entities do budgeting and somehow can predict, things that, how much things are going to cost. And so, but in this case, for whatever reason, we missed the mark. And I think that extra 13,000 is going to have to come from somewhere. So it does put a hardship on the port in terms of coming up with the funding for this. But if staff is proposing it, then they figured out a way to do that. So.
And the Port Commission made that decision during the budget approval process. So, but I'm ready to move this forward if you're ready for a motion.
Yes. The port is ready for motion.
I would move to approve personal services agreement. Oh, wait a minute, I'm on the wrong page and I'll redo something I already did. I move to authorize the executive director to enter into personal services agreement 2021-1023 with Martin Associates for the economic benefits study in the amount not to exceed $38,000.
So it's been moved to authorize the executive director to enter in a personal services agreement number 2021-1023 with Martin Associates for the economic benefits study in the amount not to exceed $38,000. Is there a second? I'll second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes.
It was a nay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Motion passes. Thank you, Jerry, for this presentation, and we look forward to hearing more about this study as it unfolds. Next on the agenda is the Resolution 2021-02 Commission Rules, and the amendment to tonight's agenda was to be looking at a red line version, so Felicia can review the few changes from the last time we talked.
Thank you, Commissioner. Felicia Brown, General Counsel, here tonight to bring forth the revised rules resolution for a decision from the commission on whether to accept the changes that have been brought forth so far. What you've received this evening is a copy of the revised commission rules resolution based off the feedback and guidance from the commissioners at the May 3rd and May 3rd, 2021 and May 10th, 2021 meetings. The process involved bringing the revised resolutions to the commission for their review and input regarding whether or not staff had accurately captured the agreements from the March 15th meeting. Aspen, are you able to share the screen with me so that I can show the red lines and commented versions on my computer?
Yes, I just made you co-host, so you can go ahead.
Great, thank you.
Yes, of course.
And so, are you guys able to see it? Because I can't tell.
Not yet.
So it's still telling me that I'm viewing the commission coordinator screen.
Sorry, I think it's because I was sharing my screen. I just unshared so you can.
Okay. There we go. Okay, so I have quite a few screens in front of me and different versions just because of the way that we track. And so what's in front of you right now is the rules resolution. And I'm going to take you to the first comment. And because of the way that we have them, the version on my computer that I'm sharing with you is actually the same version that's in your packet, but I have the comments in this one as well. And so I do not have the red line, but I have the comments. And I will walk you through these changes if that's acceptable, Commissioner.
Commissioner Zita, it's acceptable to me. Commissioner Zita, is this acceptable to you? This is just like a red line version.
It's not a red line version, but it's what we got. So let's work with this. Is it possible to make the text bigger?
Yes, I will actually close the search navigation tool and I will increase the view.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. So here we are on page 9, which is Article 5. Nope, I'm actually going to start at the beginning. Give me 1 second. There we go. Now we are on page 9 and we are within Article 5, Section F. And the language here was cleaned up per our May 10th meeting to now read, any commissioner or the executive director may make a point of order if necessary. The previous version had additional language that had to do with whether or not somebody was wrong in what they said, and we removed that. According to my notes, that was something that Commissioner Zita helped us out with. Any questions about this change that I can address? Okay, great. I'm going to move on to the next change from the May 10th meeting. Here we are on page 10. We are in Article 6, Section A2. And in this version, oh, I got a thumbs up from Commissioner Zita. I'm going to run with the thumbs up because it was actually very hard to go through and look at the red line in front of me. But essentially, we cleaned that language up so that it's more clear per a recommendation from Commissioner Downing. And then from the May 10th meeting, we had one last change. That's here on page 14. It is Article 9, Section D. And the change specifically had to do with pursuant to, and what I've done here is said pursuant to Article 6A3, there was conversation from the last May 10th meeting about whether or not we were referencing this same paragraph of Article 9, or we were referencing Article 6. I read it as a reference to Article 6A3, which has to do with public comment at the meetings. It looks like there's feedback, and so Commissioner Zita or anybody else want to give me some feedback on this edit, I will happily take it.
No, that just means I can live with it. I disagree
Oh.
with the content, but you captured the commissioner's agreement correctly.
Okay, thank you. And so these three changes were the things that differed from the version that we reviewed on May 10th, and they comprise the revised rules resolution that's before you today for a decision.
Thank you, Felicia.
Absolutely, thank you. Any other questions? And so for this one, the recommended motion is for the commissioners to accept the revised commission rules resolution as it reads today in a clean version in your packet.
Thank you, Felicia. Commissioners, would you like to put forth that motion? Let me take a stab at it. I move to approve the version of the rules resolution as presented in the packet tonight for approval with my fellow commissioners. And it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion's approved. Thank you very much, Felicia, for guiding us through those revisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Aspen, I'm going to stop my share. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Moving on to item J, action other calendar, and there's no agenda under that. So we're going to move to item L, which is the advisory calendar. And we have two items there. The first item is interlocal agreement establishing the Olympia Sea Level Rise Response Collaborative with our own Sam Gibney presenting.
Great, thank you, commissioners. I'm here tonight to present documents for your consideration that would establish the Olympia Sea Level Rise Response Collaborative. Next slide. By way of background, in 2017, the port entered into an interlocal agreement with the City of Olympia Lot Clean Water Alliance, and of course the port, and funded a sea level rise planning process. In 2019, of March of that year, a sea level rise response plan was issued. And again, in the same year, resolution 2019-04, the Port Commission adopted the sea level rise response plan. Next slide. Moving on from there, the Sea Level Rise Response Collaborative, the intent is to really continue the coordination of the three entities to share data, learn from each other, coordinate efforts, etc. Next slide. Guiding principles are here. These are also stated within the documents that you have. Next slide. The documents that you have include the interlocal agreement, which would establish the collaborative. And appended to that are the bylaws of the collaborative. Both these documents were reviewed by my staff and then by the Joint Administrative Committee on April 29th, 2021, and comments from that committee meeting were incorporated. And Commissioner Zita is the port representative on that Joint Administrative Committee. Next slide. The interlocal agreement sets out the intent and focus, the scope of the agreement that includes the setup of the executive committee, incorporates the bylaws, project implementation and prioritization, ongoing strategic planning efforts, and administrative support. It also sets forth the duration of the agreement, how members are admitted and how they can withdraw, and indemnification, ownership of work products, dispute resolution, etc. Next slide. The bylaws, which are Appendix A to the local agreement, include the purposes. This basically the rules. This would be akin to our own rules resolution and how the collaborative would operate. So it's the purposes of the collaborative, governance structures, officers, committees, procedure, administration, and other miscellaneous items. Next slide. The commitments called for are to ongoing participation in the process and collaboration, implementation of projects with both a phased approach and as budgets allow, continued joint planning efforts, and then last but certainly not least is to participate in joint funding of administrative support. The current, and I put this forward to the commission previously, for the remainder of this year would be $40,000 for this. So the port share would be $13,333. Next slide. Next steps would be bring this back for consideration for commission action on June 14th in 2021 to authorize the executive director to sign and execute the interlocal agreement. And next slide, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Sam. Commissioner Zeta has a question.
Thank you for that summary, Sam. I recommend that my fellow commissioners continue our support for this process. It's a good group. It's a good process. The City of Olympia has been providing staff support at their own expense all these years, and we're asked to contribute only a little bit to continue this important process.
Commissioner McGregor, do you have any comment?
Just a couple of questions. On page 2, under the intent, if you can go to the agreement, it's the third paragraph talks about members. And so if someone becomes a member, then they have voting rights, they help funding, they do, they're participating as a full voting member. But there's also an avenue called associates who are non-voting and ex officio participants. So they would not have any funding liability with the agreement. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay, and so if there are 3 members, then it would take 2 of the 3 to vote somebody as a member or vote them as an associate. Is that the thinking
Yes.
here?
Mhm.
Okay, all right. That was my only question.
Yep.
We talked about the funding of the position, and we've already had a discussion on that a while ago, so thanks.
Great.
Yeah, I'm all in on this thing. So it's incredibly important. It's not going to take much for one of those king tides to go over the banks and do some flooding, and that's going to get people's attention. So I think the commissioners are on board, but I urge this group, this collaborative group, to move forward, appropriately, so that we can be actually, have things in place ahead of time. I mean, I think it's a good discussion, and there's a certain inevitability about sea level rise. I'm sorry to say that climate mitigation, which can help this situation, is just not going to happen fast enough for us to avoid sea level rise over the next 20 or 30, 2 or 3 decades. So yeah, I'm all in. Thanks for that presentation, Sam.
Mhm.
Oh, Commissioner Zeta has another comment.
So you're quite right, Commissioner Downing. King tides will affect us more and more with 2 feet of sea level rise. The report that was finished a couple of years ago tells us we'll have 150 floods at the marine terminal every year. And you're right that climate mitigation can't solve that problem, but it can help. And I'll tell you, the biggest thing that the port could do for climate mitigation is not log the forest in the Newmarket Industrial Campus. There will be other things that I'm sure that the POCAC committee will bring to us, but that is one of the biggest things we could do. I have one small correction on page 58 of the packet. It's page 8 of the interlocal agreement. The city changed this partly. We might want to get this tweaked a little bit. Could we please look at page 8 of the interlocal agreement? That's page 58 of the packet.
I'm sorry, we just don't have it ready to pull up. We don't have the packet ready.
Oh,
I'm happy
well,
to take notes.
when it lists the people who are signatories to this, it has environmental director listed twice in the position for the Port of Olympia. And I think it only needs to be listed once.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see that. I have a packet pulled up on my own laptop here. So yeah, good catch, Commissioner Zeta. Okay. Well, thanks, Sam, for that presentation.
Mhm.
And for that advisory on that subject. So we'll look forward to more discussion of that. So meanwhile, we're going to move to item 2, which is the 2021 first quarter financial report with our own Myung-Hee Lee. Myung-Hee, are you with us tonight?
Yes, I am.
Hey,
Now
okay
it's-
then.
Now I got a thing is that I can unmute myself.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Myung-Hee Lee, your Finance Manager and as Auditor, reporting first quarter results and changing net positions. Next slide, please. At 2021 first quarter glance, total income is ahead of the budget by $595K. Gross operating income is ahead of the budget by $300K. Net non-operating income is favorable by $255K. Contribution margin is ahead of a budget by $264K. Net non-operating income is favorable by $340K. Net position increased by $991K compared to the quarter 1, 2020. Next slide, please. Combining operation and non-operation income resulted in a total income for $991K, which is over the budget amount of $395K by $595K. These positive results were due to the operating expense coming under budget by $332K, environmental expense coming under budget by $204K, and other operating expenses coming under budget by $61K. Next slide, please. You are looking at the net operating loss for the 2021 first quarter of $770K for the business units here. This is favorable by $332K compared to the budget loss of $409K. This result is mainly due to operating and maintenance expense of $1.792 million compared to the budgeted of $2.132 million, which is $330K under the budget. Excellent operating results. Next slide, please. First quarter of 2021 financial report shows a gross operating revenue of $3.353 million, operating and maintenance expense of $1.795 million, administrative service expense of $0.565 million. Net depreciation expense were $1 million, resulting in net operating loss of $112K, which is favorable by $255K compared to the budgeted loss of $367K. Next slide, please. Contribution margin is operating income before the depreciation and administrative overhead allocations. Contribution margin increased by $197K or 16% compared to the 2020 first quarter. Compared to the budget, it is favorable by $264K or 22%. Next slide, please. Here we are showing first quarter of net income for business units. Compared to 2020 first quarter actual, net loss is ahead by $356K compared to the 2021 first quarter budget. Net loss is favorable by $179K. Next slide, please. Non-operating revenue is $1.816 million, coming in under the budget by $6K. Non-operating expense is $0.714 million, coming in under the budget by $354K, which resulted in a net non-operating income of $1.1 million, which is favorable by $340K, as you can see it on the slide. Compared to the 2020 first quarter, net non-operating income increased by $6,000, and trend shows that we have been increasing slightly. Next slide, please. This slide shows a picture of Port of Olympia at the end of first quarter net position, which is commonly called equity in private sectors. Net position is grown by $990K for the first quarter ending March 31st, 2021 to total of $85.1 million compared to the 2020 first quarter of $84.1 million. Next slide, please. Now here you see 2021 first quarter statement of cash flow. Cash at the end of December 31st, 2020, which is the beginning cash at 2021, January 1st, $9.6 million. Receipts from customers were $3.8 million, and grants, other receipts are $117K. Tax sharing is $41,074, and ad valorem tax, which is a property tax, coming in at about $500,000. Interest receipt of $21,155. That brings total receipts to the $4.5 million. Payments are made to the suppliers for the goods and services for $1.6 million. Payments to the employees for salaries and benefits are $1.2 million. Principal and interest payments for the first quarter was $12,539. Acquisition and construction of a capital asset, we spent $62,478. That brings the total payments to $2.9 million. Beginning of the cash, $9.6 million, net increase in cash of $1.6 million. Cash at the March 31st, 2021 comes to $11.2 million. Next slide, please. This slide shows where your cashes are. General fund cash was $7.3 million. Capital reserve funds are $1 million. 2018 A bond construction fund has the $883,000 left, and bond and debt repayment funds has $1.5 million. Real estate reinvestment funds have $455K. Economic Development Corporation has $2,811, and Foreign Trade Zone Fund has $37,000 and $632. Petty cash and cash drawers are equal to $1,270. That brings to total cash of $11.2 million. Next slide, please. Is there any questions?
Thanks, Myung-hee. Fellow commissioners, have you had a chance to look at the financial statement there, and do you have any questions? I have one. Myung-hee, can you go back to the net position slide, please? Change in the net position from
10. Oh, no. I guess 9.
There we go. So the question that I have is, what would cause well, maybe I was looking at the wrong line. So the total net position is the bottom line. So it's showing a steady increase, meaning the value of the assets of the port have gained in value over these few years. Is that true?
True. Equity section of the net in private sector is increased slowly but surely, but the 2020 is increased much better.
I see.
81 million to 84 million.
And what would be the cause of that in 1 year? What do you think? What would be the cause of the overall assets to increase?
Main thing is the depreciation. Depreciation was $4 million. So there you go. we didn't increase much of capital assets, yet we have a decrease in accumulative depreciation expenses. So that's what's causing it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Zita has a question.
I'm glad you took us to this slide. I have a question. Could you just give us an example, Myung-hee, for all the audience of what are unrestricted unrestricted assets?
This is it.
We've got $1 million in unrestricted assets. What is that?
This is, as I explained it to you before, like a capital asset is, we got $81 million. That is total assets minus the what we have in debt for the assets. So total asset minus the debt comes to the capital asset. And the restricted is what we have to restrict it. For example, that we cannot spend this money. Example is that bond funds and other funds that are restricted, we can spend. The unrestricted portion of $1.85 million is that that equity section is we can freely spend. It doesn't have anything to do with the cash, but the equity side of it, we can spend that money. I mean, that equity side of it.
Right. So could you give us an example of an unrestricted asset?
It's it's the equity that is spendable. We can pay out, we can spend it this much of equity. I mean, our net position freely, which is restricted. We cannot spend without it, any information. Which is a capital asset side of it. It's restricted in the cash. I mean, restricted in the asset, hard building, hard, all of those asset to pay off our debt. So it's just that we can spend those money. We can spend those equity section of it. We can spend $1.085 million.
So I have other questions, but let's let Commissioner McGregor go.
Thank you. I just have a couple of them. On slide, can we go to slide 2? Thank you. So the third bullet says net non-operating income loss favorable 255K. Then the fifth line down says net non-operating income is favorable by 340. What's the difference between those two bullets?
Oh,
I mean, they sound the same title, so I just wonder what is the difference between those two?
let's go to slide 3, please. That is operating income, net operating income.
Okay, for the 340.
Correct.
No, for the 255 is
Yes,
net. Okay, so those two figures show up in that on that slide.
yes.
Is that correct? Okay. Then on slide 10, can you explain to me what tax sharing is?
Tax sharing is where we give a leasehold tax to the state, and the
Okay.
leasehold tax, that portion of ours, they give us back. Not a whole lot of money, but it is there by very little. So it's a sales tax. Sometimes they give us back a little bit of it. Mainly, this is tax sharing is forest tax,
Okay.
lumber tax, or something like that. Forest harvesting tax.
Okay. So the in the example tonight, under bills and vouchers, there was a 200 and I'm going to throw out a figure. I don't know if it's how accurate. About $270,000 worth of leasehold tax went to the
17,000,
county,
yes.
and part of that then came back to us, and we call that tax sharing. Then is that correct?
Yes, tax
Okay.
sharing. Very little is our portion of it. Port of
Right.
Olympia, I guess, is like maybe $8,000 annually.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Back to you, Commissioner Zeta.
Let's see. I'm somewhere between slide 3 and slide 8. You have lower maintenance expenses, 333,000. I'm sorry, I didn't get exactly which slide that was. Might have been slide 4. Let's try the next one. There we go. So main operation and maintenance expenses, 338,000 less. Is that right?
We spend less.
Right. Is that deferred maintenance?
Say it again. Defer, I don't know. Because this is what we spend, what we use it, what we paid out.
That's right. That's not really a fair question for the finance manager, is it?
No, not yet. Until the end of the year, then yeah, I can say, hey, at this year we did this, but the quarterly reporting wise, it could be a very favorable. Who knows? It can go on forever. You never know, because
Yeah.
operations and maintenance, I think we try to bring our costs down by doing a lot of work in-house versus us, getting services from outside. So I
Right.
think that is doing a really good business here.
Right. We just want to be sure that we're not saving money in the short term with deferred maintenance, because that'll cost us more in the long term. So
I don't think
we'll
I don't think
another look
Alicia
at
will
that.
do that.
Yeah, we'll take
think-
another look at that at the end of the year. So
Yes.
a question related to that is on slide 8. On slide 8, our non-operating expenses are 354,000 lower.
Yes.
Is that mostly because of those lower maintenance expenses?
No. That has a lot to do with environmental expenses. We had a huge budget of environmental expenses. We didn't spend that much money. I think $204,000 coming under environmental budget up expenses.
Okay, so was that because our guess about how much is that because we're budgeting for a worst case scenario in environmental?
Environmental budget was done, and that's the way it was. So, and another thing is that one of the things the port does is when we get it budgeted, we get it like a, let's say $100,000 budget for the operating expenses. We divide that by 12 each month, a similar amount. I mean, same amount, you know, so that's how we budgeted, and then that's how we've been budgeting it. So starting next year, like for example, Marina has very, you know, seasonal. They do most of their business in summertime. So by dividing 12 out of, you know, entire budget out of 12, beginning of the year, they're not going to do show very well, but they show really well in second, third quarter. But final quarters, they may not do well. So I think starting 22 budget, we may just go with the budget way seasonal budgeting.
Actually, the marina doesn't look that bad in the first quarter. It's only down a little bit. So thank
Yes.
you for explaining that, Myung Hee. That was very useful. Really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thanks, and thank you, Myung Hee. And Sam, did you have a follow-up comment on deferred maintenance? I think that might have got your attention.
Sure, yeah, and as Myung Hee was stating, some of these are dependent upon how the budget projections are laid out for the year. But I can assure the commission that we are being quite aggressive in the amount of maintenance that we are accomplishing, and I dare say that we are probably accomplishing a lot more maintenance, particularly in properties than we have in recent years past. So Alicia has hired up a really great team, and as was stated earlier, such as the fascia board on the Washington State Patrol building, we're able to do that in-house, seeing a cost-effective product there.
Excellent. That's great to hear. Great to hear that movement. Well, thank you, Myung Hee, for that first quarter financial report. There's some pretty good numbers in there. Congratulations to Port staff for putting up some pretty good numbers and watching our expenses as well. So that's like super great news. Anyway, next is public comment on advisory items. And tonight we had two advisory items: the interlocal agreement establishing the Olympia Sea Level Rise Response Collaborative. And then we also had the 2021 first quarter financial report. So at this time, I'd like to ask if there's any folks that would like to give public comment on these two advisory items. Okay, hearing none. I have a question. Sam, is this sometimes we have advisories and they don't come back to us. So the 2021 first quarter financial report, that won't be coming back to us a second time. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, well, thank you again for that presentation, Myung Hee. Next on our agenda is commission reports and discussion. So Commissioners McGregor or Zita, would you like to have an informal discussion of any topic related to the port and what things you've been up to and so forth?
I'll click on here. Just a couple of things. On the 11th of May, excuse me, I attended WPPA. I think it was a Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon morning meeting on redistricting. Didn't hear anything new for us. Our redistricting basically relies on the 3 commission districts that are established by the Thurston County Commissioners, and we fall into those, as well as the PUD as well. So there wasn't really any new information that came out other than the numbers may not come out till a little late, and they're hoping to be able to put that. It creates a real headache for some of these auditors that have to have like Kitsap that has 11 ports in their district, and those are all different districts. So it becomes a real headache for those kind of auditors. Not that redistricting isn't a headache for all of us, but at this point, it becomes more of an issue with those that are more local than county-wide. I'm starting to get back out into the community. I visited Tenino's chamber. I don't know if you saw a Facebook post, but it was brought up there were 3 Tono coal cars that somebody was selling, and the mayor made the announcement, and everybody passed the hat, and we started with about $600 or $700 towards the purchase of the $2,000 of 3 rail cars. And by the end of the day, he had enough donations from several sources to purchase those. So at the depot in the museum, along with the caboose, they're going to start to see some what were coal cars used in the coal mining business, which was, I guess they had a mine out there in the Black Diamond Tono area, but also in the Tenino area. So interesting thing that piqued everybody's interest at the meeting. Other than that, I'll bet those are probably the only 2 that I have to report on. So thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner McGregor. How about you, Commissioner Zeta? Any comments or reports?
Well, I already reported on the sea level rise at our last work session. I want to thank the good people at Learning Right Relations for asking me if they could stow the Lummi totem pole at the marine terminal, and to Port staff for making that happen. I joined the House of Tears Carvers on their journey to honor the struggle of Indigenous communities across the U.S. to protect sacred sites threatened by unsustainable and destructive practices, starting here at home with the Salish Sea. That was last Saturday.
Thanks, Commissioner. Last week on May 19th, I had a tour of the Waste and Recovery Center off of Hogan Road, and got to see behind the scenes how the recycling worked. I got to see how the tipping yard worked, and got to see the methane recovery from what used to be actually landfill. It's all covered over with dirt now, and now it's a transfer station. So that was quite informative, and that supports my work on the solid waste advisory committee. So it's good to have that close-up view. Then I was able, just second, Commissioner Zeta, then I was able to attend all 3 days of the WPPA, and 2 things there. One is that the technology was really quite awesome. It's taken Zoom to another level, whereby you can view a panel of people, and you're individual. So it was quite well done. And they also had, I think it was on day 2, they had a public works seminar, which was quite useful. And I think I'll send that. I'm pretty sure Sam was in attendance as well. So that was, quite useful to see how public works contracting unfolds, and the need for a robust solicitation process so that you get a lot of responses to your public works RFP. So that was pretty, you might say, timely. That was good. And then I attended the WPPA trustees report, and that was about half an hour long and pretty uneventful, but we were present for that. So I'm sorry, Commissioner Zeta, did you have a follow-up of some sort?
Oh yeah, I was really interested that you said you saw the methane recovery system at the work.
Yeah.
That's astounding to me. I had done some analysis and recommended that a methane recovery system be installed there, but the county chose not to install a methane recovery system because the methane levels are decreasing at the covered landfill. And what we have is a landfill gas flaring system, and that flaring system is being changed. So if there is now a methane gas recovery system, that would be wonderful and surprising.
Well, recovery is an interesting word and can mean many things. And the fact is that the methane is recovered, but then it is flared. So you're exactly right. At the very back end of the 30 or 40 acres, whatever the size of that place is a couple of columns where they burn off the gas, and maybe it's flaring and not recovery, but it's still pretty impressive. So It'd
mean,
be nice if we could put that into tanks and power vehicles with it or what have you, but I think that's not cost efficient.
It actually would be fabulous that renewable methane earns a pretty penny. You get 10 times as much for that as you do for propane. And at the Roosevelt landfill, which you'll probably visit later, they are producing lots of renewable methane, recovered methane from the landfill. And in fact, the legislature just passed a new law saying that all landfills are going to have to go that way under certain circumstances within the next few years. We won't have to because we're grandfathered in. I'm also I'd be interested in seeing what you got on the public works contracting. They're totally right. We need a robust solicitation process to get plenty of bids. Unlike our web process last year, we only got one bid to help fix up our website, and that indicates that we need a more robust solicitation process.
Well, thank you. So that's our reports, commissioner reports. Is there any other business before we go to meeting announcements? Great. Okay, Aspen, can you put up the meeting announcements screen one more time? Aspen, we're going to miss you so much. Okay, meetings, June 7th. We got a little break between our meetings here. Nothing going on next week, but the following week, June 7th, we have a commission work session at 2:30 p.m. June 14th, a regularly scheduled 5:30 p.m. commission meeting. June 15th, citizens advisory meeting, and the public is welcome to attend that. And they do accept public comment at the beginning of their meetings, I believe. And then June 21, our next regularly scheduled 2:30 p.m. commission work session. So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn for tonight?
So moved.
Second,
So it's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
I
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.